Hey guys, Hannah from Destined for Adventure here. Happy New Year. I wanted to share some tips because a friend was just asking me, how do you figure out if you're going to have strong enough internet when you're traveling and working online at the place that you're planning to stay before you actually get there, so that you don't get yourself into a tricky situation where the internet is actually not that good and you still have to work and you're really stressed out. Well, guys, you can learn from my mistakes because I have made a lot of mistakes in order to figure out my system now. So basically, I have a three-part system that I use. So the first part that I do is when I'm looking up a place, whether it's an Airbnb, a hotel, a hostel, or whatever type of accommodations I might be considering, I always read the reviews. And when I read the reviews, I specifically filter for reviews that mention Wi-Fi or internet. I use booking.com a lot, so there's usually a filter for that, or you can just kind of scroll through and look for those keywords. And I try to find out whether people are saying that the internet was stable, or whether it was good for working online, or whether it wasn't stable, or whatever is being said, right? And I try to assess from there. I also check how recent those reviews were, because it could be that when this accommodations got started however long ago, maybe the Wi-Fi was a certain way and maybe nowadays it's a different way. So I'll kind of check and see which recent reviews are saying also. I especially pay mind to when somebody says, I work online and I do a lot of video calls and the Wi-Fi was stable, then I'm like, okay, good. That was probably good. The second strategy that I use when I'm traveling, which I use this one all the time, literally, I usually use numbers 1 and number 2 combined. So the second strategy that I use is I will always have a backup method of internet, just in case, like sometimes when you're traveling, the Wi-Fi goes out or just it's not as strong as you thought it was, even though you already took the reviews or whatever it might be, right? So I always like to have a backup method. And that backup method is me buying a local SIM card. So if I'm traveling within Mexico or the US, I have already my SIM card from the company Telcel, which I use here in Mexico. If you're coming to Mexico and you want to get a prepaid Telcel SIM card because your cell phone plan doesn't work here in Mexico or it's just cheaper to do so rather than making your American plan international or whatever the case might be, you can buy them anywhere at any OXXO or any 7-Eleven or any, usually the grocery stores and stuff too, but for sure at any OXXO or any 7-Eleven, which are on like all the corners in all the cities, unless you're in a tiny, tiny little town. In that case, you should probably get it at the airport. And they're really affordable. Right now they have a plan, I think it's 9 gigs that lasts 30 days. And that costs around 500 pesos, which is around like 25, 30 US dollars. And the way it works is if you use up the data sooner, you just go to the OXXO or 7-Eleven, any of those places. It doesn't even have to be the same one where you bought it. And you just put more data on it. So you use up 9 gigs. You want to get another 9 gigs? Okay, great. You can also do that through the app on your phone, which is Mi Telcel. But if you don't feel like dealing with all that, you can just, reload it at the grocery store or any place like that. If you're staying in Mexico less time than that, they also have smaller plans. So maybe you just want to have like 1 gig of data just for like using the maps when you're out and about or, something like that. Totally fine, very affordable. The SIM cards themselves are very affordable. Depending on where you get them, it shouldn't be more than like $5. So I always make sure I have tons of data reloaded on there. And one trick that I found with the Telcel is I renew it before it expires. So it'll let you know, it'll send you a text message when it's about to expire. And I will add on a new packet of data before it expires. If you do that and you don't let the data expire, it accumulates. And the new expiration date is when you put the data on. So let's say that I had 5 gigs left over from last month, and I put on another 9 gigs on, let's just say, the 7th of this month, before the 5 gigs from last month ran out. Well, now I have 9 plus 5 gigs, which is now good for 30 days from the 7th of this month when I put the data on, which is pretty cool. That's a little hack that I found out. So anyway, I always make sure I have data. I'll try to buy unlimited data in other countries if I can, or I'll just buy a really big package. You need to calculate how much data you're going to use. If you're like myself and you do a lot of video calls where you need to be on video, a 1-hour video call consumes approximately 1 gig of data. So depending how many meetings you have during the day or video calls you have during the day, that'll give you an idea. Now, keep in mind, uploading and downloading video files also utilizes a lot of data. So if that's something that you need to do, like audio or video files or photos, That uses a lot of data as well. If you're simply surfing the web or you're on audio only calls, it doesn't use nearly as much as 1 gig per hour. So that's a really good tip for you guys. So get your local data SIM card. It's going to help you out. And the third tip that I use when I'm traveling, and I use this one less often, but I have certainly used it before, especially if I either have really important meetings going on or I know I'm going to be staying in some place for a while, then I will ask the host to do a speed test. And what I tell them to do is just literally go to Google, type in speed test at the place where the internet is that I'm going to be staying. Not at their house, not on their phone, right? But at the place using the Wi-Fi where I'm going to be staying. And then send me a screenshot of it. If they're not able or willing to do that, that's probably a concern. A lot of times if I ask them to do that and they're either not techie or maybe they manage the property but they live somewhere else, then sometimes what they'll do is they'll tell me, well, my plan is the 110, gigabits per second plan, or it's this or that plan. You should be able to Google it and see whether that's fast enough for video calls. I think you actually only need like 11 megabits per second. I can't remember if that's the download speed in order to do video calls. So based on that, you should be able to figure it out, but hopefully they'll be kind enough to do the actual speed test for you. Another trick that I'll do is if I'm staying, especially at like a hotel or some place that has like multiple rooms and multiple people staying there, I'll ask them to put me in a room that's closest to the router because I work online and I need fast internet. So, in a hotel, there might be a lot of rooms and maybe not all of them are near the router or I don't remember what it's called, but like the redirector thing. I don't even remember what that word is. But anyways, yeah, I'll ask them to put me near one of those rooms, and I'll ask them that when I check in as well. Because sometimes when you check in, maybe they miss the note from wherever you reserved your room, or it's somebody else, or whatever, just to make sure that it's top of mind. And it doesn't cost any extra to do that, right? And at least it'll help. And I'll usually request, especially if I'm staying at a hotel or something, I'll usually request that there is a table or desk and a chair in the bedroom. The reason I say a chair is because sometimes they will just mention like the end table, which the end table is not very convenient for working on, especially if you're staying there more than a couple of days. So that's kind of some tips that have worked for me for finding places that have reliable internet online when I am traveling. Like I said, I always like to have at least one backup method. So I would have making sure I have a good internet at the place I'm staying, but also my phone having a lot of data so that I can use my phone as a hotspot if I need to. Hope that helps, guys, and drop your tips below for what you've used to find good, fast, reliable internet while you're traveling.